Perspective on what's unfolding in the Middle East is Roland Paris. Professor Paris was a foreign policy advisor to Prime Minister Justin Trudeau and is now the director of the Graduate School of Public and International Affairs at the University of Ottawa. Hi, Professor Paris. Good to see you.
You too.
Thank you for making the time. I wanted to start on the Houthis just before we get into Canada's position and ask you, based on what we've seen unfold so far, do you think the risk of the war expanding has increased as a result?
Well, it has increased. I don't think that it's imminent, an expansion of this war. The bombing was very targeted, and the real question for me is it going to have any effect? Because the Houthis have been subject to bombing by Saudi Arabia since 2014, and after that being pounded by Saudi Arabia, they still were able to sustain themselves. So I don't think that we're going to see a surrender of the Houthis in response to this bombing.
Canadian Armed Forces members provided help in the planning stages of this. There were no assets involved. The opposition in this country appears split on Canada's participation at all. The NDP is critical of it. The Conservatives support it. Does Canada's role here make sense to you?
Yes, it does. And, we're providing a very modest support in terms of targeting and intelligence analysis. It's, we're not part of the strike coalition at all. That's just the US and the UK. But look, what the Houthis are doing is trying to attack commercial shipping in the Red Sea, where there's 15% of the world's seaborne commercial traffic. So this is a form of terrorism that's taking place, that's holding the world economy hostage as well. I think it makes sense for the United States to do what it can to try and protect that shipping, and for Canada to do what it can to help the United States.
I wanted to drill down with you on Canada's position. In the introduction, we kind of outlined what the Prime Minister said. He supports, and the government, he says, supports the process that is underway before the ICJ. That doesn't mean, he says, they support South Africa's position, which is, of course, accusing Israel of genocide. He also didn't say he rejects it. Is that significant?
Yeah, I think that it is significant. I mean, let's take a step back. We're at 100 days now since October 7th, this tragic period which began with the killing of more Jews in one incident since the Holocaust, and then followed by what can only be described as a disproportionate response by Israel in Gaza. But the charge of genocide suggests that it's the policy of the Israeli government to exterminate the Palestinian people. And that is baseless, and that's wrong. So I think it's right for the Canadian government to have said that it doesn't support that position. I would have preferred to hear a clearer statement that it rejected the premise of the genocide charge.
What do you think explains the hesitancy to do the latter?
I can only guess, because I'm not part of any internal discussions, but the divisions within the Liberal caucus have been very publicly visible, and I assume that what's happening is an attempt to try and bridge those differences.
Do you think it's possible to, at the same time, explicitly say, as a government or in a school of thought, I reject the idea that this is genocide, while at the same time be very concerned about, as you describe, what appears to a lot of people as a disproportionate response to the terror attack on October 7th?
Yeah, I think this is a very important point, that it's possible to be appalled by what's going on in Gaza and also appalled at the idea that Israel would be charged with genocide. Listen, the situation in Gaza is an incredible tragedy. It's a humanitarian catastrophe. And there are some good grounds to question Israeli action in the light of international law, specifically the law of armed conflict, which says you should try to minimize the damage, the collateral damage to civilians. But the charge of genocide is a whole other thing. And I think that it's possible for us to be simultaneously concerned at Israel's actions in Gaza and at the same time feeling that, or thinking that, this charge of genocide is really baseless and wrong.
Okay, Professor Paris, I have to leave it there. I appreciate your insights today. Thank you.
Thank you.